Two, three. Hello and welcome to our weekly Parshas Shiur with commentary of the Alshich Kodesh. As usual, there's dedication at the beginning of the Shiur. And again, if you would like to have a dedication to celebrate or to mark the celebration of our mitzvah and engagement, some happy time, or maybe for your side to remember somebody you love who's passed away whom you loved, then please get in touch with me. Just send me an email to yy@rabbiyyy.com, yy@rabbiyyy.com, and we'll be more than happy to dedicate the Shiur. The dedication for this week is, I'm not actually going to mention the name. I've got to check that the person wants the name out there in the public, but it's a very sweet young man whom I know. He's a father of a young family. They're a gorgeous family. He's got a fabulous wife. Unfortunately, a few years ago, he suffered from cancer. And even though he's just literally in the last couple of weeks a new baby, also in the last couple of weeks, there is a suspicion, a fear that the cancer's come back. So I would like to dedicate this year personally because it's not yet confirmed. There's a big difference. So if there's a confirmation of something as serious as cancer, it's a bigger miracle for Hashem to, as it were, make it go away. But if it's not yet been fully confirmed, then it can easily be the case that Hashem, or more easily the case for Hashem to do the miracle, because open miracles require a lot of zachusim, a lot of merits. So if you would just please have in mind, if those who are watching this, just to daven for a very sweet young man, who is only a young man in his early 30s, who's just a new little baby, along with his other little babies, who is going through a worrisome time at the moment, that my friend, his fears should be groundless, and he should remain healthy and happy and worry-free until he's 120. Okay, with that as our introduction, we're going to look at Parshas Sisa. Now, Sisa obviously is the most dramatic Parsha, if you can say such a thing. I think so. The most dramatic Parsha in the whole of the Torah is the Parsha of the Golden Calf. And if that's not dramatic, with Hashem's threat, very real threat to wipe out the Jewish people and start again from Russia, it would be very hard to conceive of something which could be more dramatic. However, the beginning, that comes later. That's in chapter Lamed base of course, this isn't the Bamidbar, sorry, Shmos, I should say. When they're in the desert, when they're at the, sorry, frog in throat. This shows this is not, this is spontaneous and real and live. Can't be live, I'm recording it. You get the idea. But the beginning of the Parsha talks about the Jewish people giving a maxis a shekel, a half a silver coin, for the purchasing and the equipping of the building of the Mishkan. Now, here's a very important point to point out, to make here. Well, you know what? I'll keep the tension and the excitement going. I'll tell you that very important point in a second. I've not put this posuk, this posuk. I'm going to read it to you, because all we're going to do really is focus on the first posuk and look at what the Alshich has to say there. Then he'll take us into some very interesting territory, including Kabbalistic territory. But tonight, the actual main theme that the Alshich raises, I'm going to expand, and I want to read to you something from Ramatziel Solomon in his commentary on the famous classic ethical Mussar work, Mesilas Yesharim, and also something that Rabbi Yerucham, Ramatziel is of course the Mashgiach of Lakewood, but the Mashgiach of the old Mashgiach of Mir, Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz. I want to tell you what he has to say on the exact same theme. So we are taking the Alshich right up to date. So let's read the Parsha, the first few psukim in the Parsha, just to get a feel of what it's talking about. And then let's go back and see. That'll be interesting, because those of you who have been with me for many weeks, and in some occasions for a year now, see if you've honed your Alshich skills of looking at the posuk and saying, why does it say that? Or how do you translate that? That's not right. Why is it in the singular? It should be in the plural. Or why is it in the masculine? It should be in the feminine, etc. Okay, but before we get to that, let me take off my glasses. I have done, and read to you the posuk. So the beginning of Kisisa. V'yidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. And Hashem speaks to Moshe and he says, Kisisa es rosh b'nei Yisrael. When you count the Jewish people, Sisa actually means to elevate. But the act of being counted by Moshe, the ultimate prophet of Hashem, the ultimate, as it were, ambassador of Hashem, obviously that's an act of elevation. And Rabbi Yerucham, as I mentioned before, has got a wonderful essay on the fact. And don't think it's just that when they walked in front of Moshe and Aaron and in their half shekel coins, that was it. No, there's something incredible to be actually presented to the greatest of the generation. Moshe and Aaron, that's a tremendous elevation, a tremendous salute to us as individuals to be able to do this. And notice, incidentally, I can't remember where I saw this. It's a great idea. Was it half a silver coin or a whole silver coin? And the answer is because it's to show you that you're incomplete. Every Jew is incomplete without another Jew. And that's why, of course, the Gemara starts with the in Daf base. Never starts with Aleph. There's no Aleph, no page 1. It's page 2. Is the beginning of any page of the Talmud. You need 2 to learn it. You need a chuvrusa. The Torah begins with Bereshis, the base. The success of a spiritual growth is always 2 people walking shoulder to shoulder. Anyway, having said that, and going off at a slightly tangentially, because that's not what I want to do, let's go and see what it says. So, the Jewish people are going to be counted, and their counting is going to be when they give a half a shekel coin, which is going to be used for the construction of the Mishkan. So again, V'daber Hashem al Moshe lemor, and Hashem speaks to Moshe, and he says, Ki Sisa es rosh b'nei Yisrael. When you count the heads of the Jewish people, lepekudehem according to their numbers, and benosne ish kofer nafshay, and each one will give a kofer nafshay. I've got my Art Scroll English translation here, so I'll see how they translate that. Each man should go, and good. Kofer, the word is Kippur, Yom Kippur, and atone for his soul, because when you count them, when you number them, so that there will not be a plague when you count them. We're not allowed to count a Jew directly, Jews directly. And so if you're in a shul and they're looking to see if there's 10 Jews there to constitute a minyan, a quorum, to see if they're correct, then you don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's a lot to say in this. You'll find in my, if you watch this Shiur on my, either in Torah Anytime or my YouTube channel, you'll find another Alshich Shiur which deals with that, or this concept more in depth. If you go and look at another one of my Alshich Shiur on Sisa, I talk about it there. But the general idea is when you count somebody, it's a protection. There is an insurance policy that Jews enjoy by being part of the whole of the Jewish people. To count Jews is to separate them. 1, 2, 3. That breaks away that unity and that iron dome, if you can use a modern term, that gives us spiritual protection. And therefore, as a consequence, you mustn't count Jews directly. And as I said, in synagogue, if you're looking for a minyan, some people use psukim from Tehillim or various other psukim which have got 10 words. So you look at a Jew and you say the words. And if you got to the end of the pasuk, every time you said one of the 10 words, and there's a Jew that fitted each word, then it's an indirect way of counting. Coming from Great Britain, I like to use the maybe this is totally inappropriate, but the verse from Shakespeare, to be or not to be, that is the question. And for those who are watching on video as opposed to listening to this in the car, I can demonstrate to be or not to be, that is the question. Yes, there are 10 words there. And so, and it's also quite nice, bearing in mind what it's saying in English. Is there going to be a minyan tonight or not? To be or not to be? That's the question. Anyway, you don't count Jews directly. Fine. That's the idea. And then the pasuk goes on to say exactly how you do this and call it Iver, Pekudim, etc. That's really, we don't need to go into this in any more depth. Statement: Jewish people are being counted. How they're being counted, and how they're being counted is through half a silver coin, which they're going to give, which is going to be used for the Mishkan. Fine. That's all. Fine. However, this is the big dramatic moment I started with and then waited for. When is this? When are they being counted? When is this half a silver coin? At which point? And remember, straight after this is the story of the golden calf. Is this Mishkan, is the creation of the Mishkan, the dedication, the work to create the Mishkan, did that happen before the golden calf or after the golden calf? Well, according to the Alshich, who follows the footsteps of Rashi HaKodesh, The answer is this was after the golden calf. The creation of the Mishkan in and of itself is there in order to repair the damage that was done to the Jewish people and to the relationship of the Jewish people with the Kodesh Baruch Hu by making the golden calf. So this is not chronological, even though it's at the beginning of the Parsha, which goes on to tell the story of the tragic story, the catastrophic story of the golden calf. Despite that fact, this happened after the golden calf. Now that's going to be very critical and very crucial. So let's look at the Pasuk and let me see if I can jog your interest in an Alshich-like way and see if you can spot the problem. V'yidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, Pasuk Aleph, and of course you can easily pause this if you're watching this either on Torah Anytime or on my YouTube channel. Get the Chumash in front of you and look at it yourself. Certainly make it easier for you to spot the question. But if you want to spot it yourself, because that was what did they say? Spoiler alert! I'm about to tell you. So if you want to have the great joy and excitement of spotting the question yourself, this is the moment to press the pause button. I won't be offended, and then you can see if you can spot the question. And when you come back, you'll see if you agree with the if you got it, you got the Alpha's question or not. So more kisiso. So when you count, again, you will be elevated by the counting, but it's an act of counting. Kisiso. It's Rosh Bnei Yisrael, the heads of the Jewish people, Lipigodim according to their numbers. According to their numbers? How can you count them otherwise? Count them according to their Teslas, to their horses? What does it mean? Count them according to numbers. That's a tautology. Of course you count according to the numbers. So therefore it should just say, Israel. When you count the Jewish people, each man will give half a silver coin. Why does it say we don't count them according to their numbers? So the word lepikudehem is floating, according to the Alshich, in the Pasuk, disconnected and irrelevant to the statement that the Jewish people are being counted. Well, of course they are. That's why it's a kisisa. So we don't need lepikudehem. But it's there. Hashem put it there. And therefore it's telling you something else. The question is what? Then it says, the Alshich is interested in this, is kaifer nashrei. And it's to be a kaifer nashrei. A kaifer, again, word of kippur, atonement for the soul. Atonement for what? Atonement for what? And remember, this comes after the golden calf. That's all we're going to look at in the Psukim. And let me take you to the Arsh. I should incidentally tell you this week that I just about 4 hours ago, was it 4 hours ago? No, sorry, 6 hours ago, had my second vaccine from Mr. Moderna, whoever he is, my second COVID vaccine. And so there is a bit of a rumor that the second one can sometimes make you feel very not good. So I'm rushing to get this Shiur on the internet, unless I get the flu, which is sometimes the severe flu, what happens after the second Moderna vaccine. People have asked me what happened after the first Moderna vaccine. Nothing at all. I did get a tremendous rash in my chest, and when the rash cleared up, and it was the outline of Bill Gates' face, but apart from that, everything was perfectly okay. So anyway, so let's, in case I get the flu in the middle of this, let's see if I can take us quickly to the Alshich, and let's see what he has to say in this. And again, this is going to be some very deep stuff and very, very interesting stuff. Well, I promise you. But it's the Alshich. What else would I promise? What else could I promise? What else would there be? So he says, to answer these two questions, can I just remind you of the questions? Why does it say you will count them according to their numbers? Just say you should count them, full stop. Why does it have to be as an atonement for what they did wrong? So let's see. He says, to understand what's going on here, why do they have to, what are they atoning for in that generation? Ish kaifer nafsha, the Pasuk says that this should be a kapara, an atonement for what you've done wrong. Because this is the aftermath, this is the follow on from what happened to the golden calf. But what happened to the golden calf? Well, the people who were involved in the creation of the golden calf, and we'll maybe come to them very shortly, then they were dealt with. How were they dealt with? Well, the answer is that those who were Now, in Jewish law, in order to execute somebody, remember Moshe Rabbeinu says, when he comes down from Mount Sinai, Mi Lashem Eli, all those who would stand by me and stand at my side to defend Hashem, come and stand by my side, indeed, with your swords. And the Bnei Levi, the tribe of Levi, do so. And they go through the camp and execute. And it's only 3,000. It's not a huge number. But of course, it was a much bigger number of people involved in what went wrong. So if it was 3,000, what was the criteria for execution? And the answer is, in Jewish law, if somebody has committed a crime which carries with it the death penalty, and surely creating an idol for Mount Sinai would be one of those times, but any Jewish capital punishment has got very, very strict requirements, because the Torah is really quite against capital punishment. And two of the most essential ingredients that can cause that outcome is that there are two witnesses who witnessed the act and critically and crucially warned the person, citing chapter and verse in the Torah why you can't do this, and if the person does it, that he will be executed. And by the way, the executioners are the witnesses themselves. I mean, they have to go to court, but if the person's found guilty, then the people who actually carry out the execution are the witnesses themselves. They were the ones who saw it, and consequently were most damaged emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually by what they witnessed. So therefore, those who were warned, don't you make that golden calf, don't you worship that golden calf. That's against Jewish law, and two witnesses warned them. So we've got all the requirements needed in order to give the death penalty. Then they were killed by the Bnei Levi, 3,000 or so. But that's if they had all the requirements for capital punishment were met. But he says, but Asher Lo B'Hasro, but if there were two witnesses who saw it, but they didn't warn them before the person carried out the act of getting involved in the golden calf, they didn't have time to warn them, then it fails. In Jewish law, you can't execute. No Beis-Din, no human, Beis-Din, a court of human beings, of men, cannot execute somebody if the two witnesses, who indeed can prove that the person did it, but they didn't warn him, then the prosecution fails, and certainly the execution fails. So what happened then? And when it was not done through Adim, right? So sorry, I missed up. If they didn't warn them, then the go from Hashem sent along a disease, and the people who did it had two witnesses who witnessed it, but they didn't warn them. Then Hashem killed them with an outbreak of some disease. And the people who had no witnesses to see what they'd gotten up to, and certainly, of course, ergo they weren't warned. Then Bodkum in Moshe Kasaitis. Then the Gemara in Yuma says that just like the sight of the woman accused of adultery who denies the adultery but is guilty of the adultery, she drinks a cup of water in which the name of Hashem is written on a piece of parchment, put in, it dissolves, and if they're guilty, they die. In the case, if you remember, of Moshe Rabbeinu, he grinds, after he burns the calf, then the ashes of the calf are put into the water which they drink, and they died that way. So we now have three categories of the guilty, and these three categories of people therefore were killed. So therefore, what does it mean at the beginning of the verse when it says that the giving of the half a silver coin is in order to atone for your sins? Atone for my sins? I didn't do anything. The people who did this were killed either by the sword of the Levim, or by the plague that Hashem sent, or by Moshe giving them the water to drink, which poisoned the guilty and was harmless to the innocent. So the rest, by definition, the vast majority of the generation were completely guiltless. So what are they bringing a kapora for? What are they bringing a sacrifice, or rather a donation, to show their contrition and tshuva and repentance? So the Alshich says the following thing. Interesting. The answer is enze ki im al sharofu yedehim melmochis b'yadasher chotem egel. Oh, they were guilty, not of the crime, but of an alternative crime, but an alternative crime closely allied with the actual crime, they didn't protest, or shirof yedehem, or they didn't protest sufficiently the people against the behavior of the people that led to the making of the golden calf. And if you could have intervened and you don't intervene, then you're in serious trouble. You've done something profoundly bad. So let's read on to the Alshich. So therefore it says, but then their guilt is because they didn't protest. They didn't try to stop what was going on. As I'm going to explain later on, he says when he gets to later on the golden calf. But now, after the golden calf, and after the whole process and the executions, etc., Hashem wants to build them up again, the Jewish people who have been so damaged by what happened, and indeed are complicit in their failure to intervene. He wants to reestablish his relationship with the Jewish people. Now, Rashi says that the counting of the Jewish people, whenever Hashem asks to count the Jewish people, it's not because he needs to know. I mean, that's ridiculous. Hashem doesn't need to know anything. Hashem knows everything. So what does he mean, count them? Let me know. The usual mashal which is given to this is like somebody who is a collector, perhaps a neurologist, perhaps, why not? Maybe a neurologist collects brains, but a numerologist collects coins, and a philatelist collects stamps. People who collect, and I'm afraid if you look at the background of my study, you can see exactly where my particular addiction lies. People often who collect things, take out their collection, they examine it lovingly, each piece, every coin, every stamp, looking at them, those who've got a passion for these things. And they're making a very simple statement that each one counts. Each one is important to me. I love the pieces of my collection. I love my collection. I love the pieces of Klal Yisrael, and I love the entirety of Klal Yisrael. That's what's going on here. Hashem doesn't need to know, but they need to know by the fact that Hashem is counting them, that he considers them precious and he loves them. And that's after the making of the golden calf. After the making of the golden calf. So he says, if I can go back and read the Alshich to you, Ata yitnu kaifa nashim. So now they will give an atonement for that failure of intervention that we mentioned before. And la'asas adoni hamishkan, which are going to be made into the silver adonim, the walls of the Mishkan that were secured at the top by sockets made of silver. That's what the coins are going to be used for. And these created the foundation, the basic structure where the Shekhinah was going to now be able to dwell. In other words, the Shekhinah was going to come down as a result of them offering their atonement for what they'd done wrong. That's what's going on here. To show that by the fact that they're doing this, that Hashem is allowing the Shekhinah to come down amongst the Jewish people. The Mishkan was the apology. The Mishkan was the structure that was there to repair the damage of the golden calf. Now, the other question we asked was, why is it that it's lepekodehem? Count them according to their numbers. And here the Alshich takes us into some Kabbalistic ideas. So I think I'll say this outside rather than inside. Now, I have to tell you, I'm hardly a Kabbalist, so I can't promise you that I know exactly what is meant in what the Alshich's telling us here. But the ultimate number, well, the number of Jews that stood in Mount Sinai were 600,000. And the Pasuk says when they come to Mount Sinai, the Pasuk says there's about 600,000. So 600,000, how many letters are there in the Torah? Well, obviously you can guess where I'm going with this one. According to the Zohar, the classic canon of mystical Jewish thought, 600,000. 600,000 letters in the Torah, paralleling the 600,000 Jews who stood in Mount Sinai, or rather, the other way about 600,000 Jews who stood in Mount Sinai, parallel the 600,000 letters in the Torah. Now I have to pause. In actual fact, there are not 600,000 letters in the Torah. The Babylonian Talmud says this, forget this, I think it's 380 8,000 something. It's just over half the 600,000. And that's quite a discrepancy. How can you possibly say it's 600,000 and 300,000? It doesn't quite make sense. However, I've seen the difficulty reconciled in several soaring by the pointing out that if you look at the Hebrew letters, and particularly the way they're written by cipher, then basically they are constructs. Almost everyone's a construct. If you imagine that, those who are watching on video, if that is a cough, is that right? Cough. You're seeing it that way? Cough, yeah. I'm seeing it that way. You'll see it that way, but I'll do it your way. Cough. And then if I put a vav in front of the cough, can you see the letter you get there? It's a lamed, right? And so is, if you put it at the top, you put it down a bit in the cough, and then you turn into a mem. Hebrew letters are often constructs of various other letters coming together. And again, the same idea. From a Jewish point of view, true Kedusha, true holiness, like the holy letters of the Torah, and true holiness itself is only when people combine as a combination to create unity. Unity is an essential thing, but unity is not homogeneous. It's created as rather like a symphony orchestra with a conductor, all the different parts, individual parts, playing indeed their role in the entirety of the piece of music that is being performed. The music in this case is the music of the Torah. The music of the Torah is performed when all come together. 600,000 Jews stand in Mount Sinai, 600,000 letters in the Torah. If one letter is missing from the Sefer Torah or is fractured, then of course the Sefer Torah is possible. It doesn't work. Had one Jew been missing, because there has never been a Jew in the world, in all of history, like the person listening or watching this shiur. That's you. Those people perhaps like you, but you are unique, and you've been sent into the world at a unique time to face the challenges of your unique time. And indeed, as we said before, in combination with other Jews, then we do what we're supposed to be doing. Now, apparently, I'm sure I've discussed with you before, there are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah which parallel the 613 parts of the human body. 248 do's in the Torah, 365 don't do mitzvahs in the Torah. 248 bones, says the Talmud in the Torah. It says the Talmud in the body, in the human body, and 365 sinews. I'm not sure if a modern anatomist would quite endorse that, but certainly you can divide the human body into that. How many parts to the human soul? Also 613 parts. And what makes why is there 600,000 letters in the Torah? Why are there 600,000 Jews? And the answer is apparently, and this is what the Alshich says, because there are 600,000, it's called orot, lights, mystical sources of the world and of us, the Jewish people in the world. And when we do these mitzvahs that we're supposed to do, we're connecting to those sources. That's the idea. At a very deeply mystical level, then the 600,000 letters in the Torah, that number of 600,000 parallels and only comes to life when each of those letters parallels a Jew. And apparently there's a letter for every Jew in the Torah. 600,000 Jews. Therefore, after 3,000 have been killed by the Livian, and after the plague in which other people were guilty or killed, and after the ones that were killed by the mysterious water that they have to drink, which poisoned the guilty, then our nice, perfect matching number to the 600,000 spiritual forces that Hashem has constructed to govern this world, being paralleled by 600,000 Jews, is now flawed. There aren't going to be 600,000 Jews because we just killed an awful lot of them. So therefore, what do you do? So 10 months later, at the dedication of the Mishkan, in the aftermath of the golden calf, then the Jews are counted again. Count them according to their number. Why say their number? Just say count them. No, I'm trying to emphasize Hashem is saying their number. What's their number? Their number is still 600,000. There's going to be a nice miraculous fit that afterwards, 10 months later, all those who were lost are going to be replaced by those who have now become 20, joining in the number of the Jewish people who constitute the 600,000. And it'll be a perfect match once again. And therefore, the Mishkan and the Jewish people are back together with Hashem. This is Hashem's, showing that he loves us and he values us once more. But let's consider, and that takes me from the Alshich to the two other sources I mentioned before. Let's consider the concept that we pointed out. There is an element of guilt that the Jewish people bear responsibility for, or bore responsibility for, and that was not shouting out, not complaining, not protesting the behavior of the Erev Rav. Now I have to tell you, it has always been an enormous problem which I had, and that the question of the Erev Rav. You see, the Erev Rav are the ones who ultimately were responsible for the making of the golden calf. And if we turn to chapter Lamed Beis, and again, you don't have to have it in front of you, but if you would like to stop and look at it, by all means you can. When the whole story of the golden calf, which is chapter Lamed Beis, in Shlois, in Sisa, and it says, V'yar ha'am, and the people saw Ki Boishas Moshe, and Moshe delayed coming down, Loredis, Minahor, coming down from the mountain. Yokala al Aaron, and the people gathered against Aaron. But Yar, my love, and they said, Kum asalona Elokim, make for us an Elokim, make for us a, perhaps, how does Art School translate this? Gabriel said to Raza, make for us gods. Okay. Elokim can mean God, but also can mean a judge. That actually, the word Elokim actually means power. And that's why Hashem is the Elokei Elokim, the source of all power. So I wouldn't like to be convicted and being found guilty of the fact I said something if the word that I chose could have three possible meanings, and only one of those meanings would get me convicted. The other two are completely para, completely neutral. There's not enough evidence to convict the Jewish people over this issue of the making of the golden calf. After all, they say they want to have an Elokim, could be a power, to be a replacement for Moshe, who was their leader. And what's the problem with Moshe? Well, the Pasuk says, make for us an Elokim asher liyachol avinu, which will go before us. So they don't want something to worship. They want something to lead them. Because this Moses, the man who took it from Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him because he seems to, he's not down from the mountain, maybe he's dead, etc., etc. This Moses the man seems strange, as the Alshich points out. It says, this Moses the man. Oh, really? He's a man? Why did they have to say that? They thought perhaps he was a banana? It's obvious he's a man. No, they're making the point. They're making the point that the problem why we need a replacement for Moses and we want a gold statue is because the problem with Moses is he's a man. Men die. Men wear out. That's why they didn't go to Aaron. The king is dead, long live the king, you take over. Because Aaron's also a man. And then this process and this crisis is going to reassert itself over and over and over again. But it's interesting, the language here. It says, Ha'am, the Alshich points out, the people came. When they see Moshe coming down. And Vayikal Ha'am al Aaron, and the Am, that's the Erev Rav, not Bnei Yisrael. And we'll see that in a second. And they say to make for us an Elohim, a leader. There's no suggestion of idolatry here. Oh, there's a suggestion, but it's not concrete. It may not. Because that's what's happened to Moshe. And then, Vayama Alim Aaron, it says, Parkanizmi Azov, so take off all your gold coins. And Aaron, whole different conversation we don't have time to go into, makes a gold statue, etc. And they say, this is your God, Israel. Who's Israel? Who are they talking to? If they say to Israel, this is your God, they can't be Israel. Right? They're talking to Israel, so they're not Israel. And that's why, if you look at Pasuk Zayin, without Hashem and Moshe, Hashem says to Moshe, Lech reid, go down. Kishikas amcha asher halenem Mitzrayim. Because your people whom you took out from Egypt, have behaved appallingly, perhaps would be the translation, I'm not sure. Become corruptly, I quickly saw the art scroll says here. But they behaved very, very badly. Sometimes you hear husband and wife arguing, rarely. And sometimes you hear the wife saying to the husband, or the husband saying to the wife, your son, do you know what your son did? To which perhaps the husband might say, my son? You had nothing to do with him? Didn't you carry him in your womb? Didn't you deliver him and bring him into the world and nurse him? My son? Isn't he our son? And of course you can reverse the roles. Sometimes when he says that to her, she says that to him as well. Oh, sorry, my child, what were you? On the basis of that, Hashem says, your people that you took out from Egypt, look how they've done. Can't you imagine Moshe saying, my people? Oh, sorry, aren't they your people? Don't you say in the Torah that B'nai Bonim, you are sons of Hashem, children of Hashem? He's the father, Avinu Malkeinu. Suddenly it's your children? Yeah, it is your children. It's the Erev Rav, who Moshe took out from Egypt, and as the classic Sforim, you can see the books behind me, make quite clear Hashem didn't want them to take them out. Moshe insisted. Why? He thought it would be good for them. Now the Alshich goes on later to explain that Hashem did recognize and did salute that his motive was right. Ultimately, the Erev Rav, their motivation, wanted to become Jewish was the fact that the Jewish people had just thrashed the Egyptians, destroyed the most powerful empire. This is the new most powerful empire which exists in the world. The Jewish people, they want to be in the winning team. That's not motivation for wanting to become Jewish, but it could become so. It could generate from insincere reasons to want to be Jewish to sincere reasons to wanting to be a Jew. And Moshe decides to take them out. But I was always troubled by this, because look what happened as a consequence. So Moshe is criticized by Hashem, but it's just a criticism. But surely this should be, why isn't he finished with Moshe because of what he did? Hashem says, don't do it, but Moshe insists. Look at what happened as a consequence of his insistence. More than that, and rather scary to consider, the Vilna Gaon says that not all the people who were guilty of the golden calf, not all the Erev Rav, the non-Jewish people that come out, were, as it were, finished off. That means to say that the ones who were actually active in the building of it, they were punished in the way that he said. But there were other people there, other Erev Rav, other non-Jewish Egyptians who had come out to become Jewish for the wrong reasons, who didn't get involved. What happened to them? The Vilna Gaon says they intermarried within the Jewish people. They became indistinguishable throughout the generations to any other Jew. And it is they who always re-emerge as the people in each generation, the Jews in each generation who are the greatest opponents to Torah and mitzvahs from within the Jewish people. Those are the souls of the Erev Rav. Now that's very problematic. During the Second World War, you'll probably know FDR, President Roosevelt, could have saved hundreds of thousands of Jews, maybe millions actually. And he could certainly have let a lot of Jews into America, and he didn't. He was aided in his refusal to do so by somebody called Rabbi, and I use that word with great irony and sarcasm, Stephen Wise, a Reform character, married to a non-Jewish woman. And Rabbi Stephen Wise was FDR's rabbi, his advisor in Jewish affairs. And he was dead against letting Jews, including Jewish children, the kinder transport, where at least the UK allowed the children, or some Jewish children in, their parents not. Americans wouldn't even let the children in. And that was this guy who was clear Erev Rav. Well, that's therefore Moshe Rabbeinu holds the responsibility. Why wasn't he severely punished for this? I was always troubled by this. Now I have to tell you, I've not yet found a tremendously satisfying answer, which just gets me excited and waiting for the day when I'm looking in one of my story behind and find a tremendously satisfying answer. And one of my books, which is called On the Derech, Answers to Questions that challenge Jewish minds, I often say, that the most exciting sentence I know in the English language is, I don't know. For me, I don't know is an incredibly exciting sentence. Because when I utter it, it means somebody's asked me a question, I don't know the answer, which is an invitation to find out the answer. And when you find out the answer, it's so, as the Yiddish word says, so beautifully, geschmack. It's so satisfying. So I'm looking forward to finding a satisfying reason. But I'll give you something to go on with, and then we'll return to our Alshich, the Alshich theme. And that is as follows. There is a TV program. I honestly have never watched this, but you see snippets of it whenever I fly around the world. And after my second vaccination, perhaps I'll be going back to flying around the world. You know, they get usually big TV screens, you know, as you're waiting to get onto the flight. So I've seen bits of something called America's Got Talent. Apparently there's a Britain's Got Talent and Israel's Got Talent, like it's exported all around the world. And you've got a panel of judges and very, very talented men and women stand up and do whatever their routine is, their trick, their show is. And at the end of it, people vote for them. Usual talent shows. It's a classic format. As I don't know very much about it, but I do remember as a boy, there was a British TV show called Opportunity Knocks, which was the exact same sort of thing, a talent show, which was very, very popular in Britain. It was a Canadian presenter called Hughie Green, who was Jewish. And they had various people who would come on, they would be interviewed, and then they would do their shtick, fine. At the end of it, then the audience voted who was the winner. So the camera would look at each person, it would sort of like smile, and then the audience would be invited to clap to see or to demonstrate who was, you know, the best. The thing called a clap-ometer, which looked like a large thermostat, a thermometer, a large thermometer. So here's my ruler for those watching. Imagine that's the thermometer. And it had a little marker that went up and down. Something like something, I mean, the British, so they're going to applaud, you know. So somebody was, it's okay, so maybe you up to about a third and then it would come down. And then, you know, somebody would go up to half. And then, you know, the loudest clap of the evening, then he was the winner, according to the studio audience. But then the people at home were invited to write in and vote. It was always interesting to see who, you know, if the studio audience's verdict was reflected in the bigger audience, the TV audience's letters of and votes. I used to daven in a show in Manchester called the Oil Tower, more of a stiebel than a show. Diane Wise, the bass team of the Eight bass team, he was the Rav there, and followed by somebody called Rabbi Ellison, both fabulous Talmudic Chachamim. And I was davening there once in Yom Kippur, and I came to Nila, of course, the last hour and a half, 2 hours, hour and a half probably, before Yom Kippur is finished, and everything that's going to be happening to the Jewish people in the month to come in the years to come is going to be decided then. And you've got an hour and a half to really give it your all. And I remember thinking, I wish there was a teshuva-ometer that would be beside the Omid, the Orna Kodesh, and the little indicator would go up and down, and maybe go up half. Oh, look at that. We're doing well. We're up to half. No, let's do more. Oh, you're up to 3/4. Oh, it's fallen down. Oh, more tshuva. So more sincerity, more promising to do better next year. Wouldn't it be good? Well, the Erev Rav fulfill exactly that function. They only rise to the top and take positions of control of the Jewish people which threaten and become anti-Torah when we vacate those positions. We vacate those positions by our lack of performance as Jews. And let me just take us back to the Alshich's point of why there was a kofer nefesh was necessary to bring the silver coin as an atonement for their souls. What did they do wrong? They didn't intervene enough. The commentary, Ramat Solomon's commentary of Mesilas Yesharim. Mesilas Yesharim, in the fifth paragraph of Mesilas Yesharim, he's discussing the midah of Zahiris, watchfulness, carefulness, introspection, making sure that the direction of your life is the way it should be. And he says that there are three things which will destroy a person's ability to grow spiritually. I'll read these two. He says, one, echad hu hatipol hatir de ba'olamis. A person is so absorbed, sucked into the vortex of the material world and all the busyness of life, he or she just doesn't spend enough time looking at who and what they are. That will stop Zahiris, being careful about your spiritual journey, being careful enough, or even being noticed whether you're going way off course. Two is Askot Velotzen, mockery, making light of serious matters, making jokes of important stuff. And the third one is Chebra Ra, a bad environment, bad people. With regards to laughter or being used negatively, Ramat Shiur brings a story here which I thought was amazing. The famous Rav Shlomo Wolbe, who's a Chatzad Yivrochel Mashgiach from Yerushalayim. So he was a Talmud incidentally of Rabbi Yerucham. He once apparently gave a Sichel Masaris, he wants to give a wonderful ethical moral shiur in Yeshiva, I think Mir. And one of the people in the audience, all the people listening to the shiur, said to him, that shiur you gave, that talk you gave was so powerful, so inspirational. Nobody could deny, nobody could fail to be inspired and fail to change as a consequence of what you said. But Omar Rav Wolbe, and Rav Wolbe said, what are you talking about? I can destroy that powerful, wonderful drosha you like with just 3 words. Ha ha ha. Interesting. I couldn't resist sharing that with you. However, Ramat Shiur, when he goes on to discover discuss the third one, which is having a bad chevra, listen to what he says. This is so powerful, and it'll take us back to the Alshich pointing out that the Jewish people had to atone for not intervening. Why wouldn't they intervene? And it's very hard to tell somebody they're doing something wrong. And if they're really doing something very wrong, and remember, as we said before, it was ambiguous. Maybe they're just asking for something, a new leader, a gold statue. Incidentally, remember, when Hashem spoke to Moshe, it was between the wings of the Kruvim and the lid of the box, which contained the tablets, 2 gold statues. So the idea of Hashem speaking through a gold statue is not so alien to Judaism. Of course, the golden calf was not designed by Hashem or commanded by Hashem. So that is the critical difference. But it's far more nuanced. It's not quite so bad as it comes out to be in the end. At the beginning, it looks reasonable. And these might be your friends. Maybe you've made friends with these people. So he says, the Mesilas Shalom quotes a pasuk in Mishli, which says that keep away from very bad people, in other words. We'll go to the pasuk. And the Rambam quotes that same pasuk. It's Mishli Yugimel Kof. And it says, Hevi pasuk zeh shekosav devorav yodim she'odam mashpiyah ma'acherim zeh l'shana. To establish the principle that people are affected negatively is another reason. Why didn't they behave? Excuse me. Behave in a way that would protest the behavior of these people, because the behavior of these people would have affected and did affect them, turn them more negative. And the Rambam says, it's the way of a person to, in his or her life, to be affected inevitably by other people and their opinions. The person goes after friends. And we take on the behavior of and the attitudes of the countries we brought up in. After all, I'm British, so I've got a British approach, and not just that, but a British accent, Scottish to be specific. In case I've never mentioned that one to you before. But German Jews are very German, Italian Jews are very Italian, and French Jews are very French, and American Jews are very American. That has an effect. The people we bump into has an effect on us. The people so therefore you have to make sure that you attach yourself to tzaddikim. My mother-in-law, Sadly, an old lady, in her 90s with a bit of dementia these days. But my wife told me when she brought her up as a girl, she always said, make sure to attach yourself to people better than you. That way you'll go up. Because I'll say attach yourself to tzaddikim. So that attach yourself to tzaddikim, so you'll learn and be inspired from them. That's the people you want to emulate and replicate. And keep away from negative forces that will corrupt you. That's the posuk. The Shlomo Melech says in Mishli, when he says, go after Chachamim and keep away from Ksinim. Behind Loimer, then Ramatziel adds his own words. Ramatziel Solomon's on sein refers Loimer. It's impossible for a person to escape the effect of the people in the environment they live in, even through learning Musa. Wow. Rabbi Rucham in Das Kochel Musa and Chelik Beis, in page Shin Beis, he says an incredibly interesting thing. It's a beautiful essay and is worthy of its own share here. However, he says, there are two types of Yetzer Hara. He's quoting the Vilna Gaon. There's two types of Yetzer Hara. A Yetzer Hara inside and a Yetzer Hara mebachutz, an external Yetzer Hara. And the external Yetzer Hara is the Yetzer Hara that exists, the negative forces that exist within society, societal pressure, societal corruption, etc., etc. And Rabbi Yerucham says that the number one fear, the number one priority of the Torah, of Moshe, when he comes down from Mount Sinai, is he repeats over and over, and here he dedicates a whole page of posuk after posuk. Moshe says, don't make covenants, don't make peace treaties and mutual cooperation treaties with the non-Jewish nations whom you're surrounded by, and they're all terribly idolatrous, horrible people right about there. It will affect you. The number one fear, Rabbi Yerucham says, that Moshe Rabbeinu has, that the Torah has, is that the Jewish people will be affected by a negative environment. And here, Rabbi Yerucham says a very interesting thing. This idea of an internal Yetzer Hara and an external Yetzer Hara. When a Yetzer Hara is still just a temptation, tempts you inside, he says, very interesting this, tempts you inside, it's still controllable. But once that Yetzer Hara becomes general in society, applies throughout society, and I can think of many contemporary examples today, then it becomes irresistible. And he too says, at that stage, it's unbeatable. Then it becomes unbeatable. Let's see if I can find this. Once a negative force becomes general, becomes societal, you're surrounded by it, then it's like it's hard as iron. It's astonishing and almost impossible again to beat. Aha. The Alshich says that they could have protested. The Erev Rav and the effect of the Erev Rav certainly had affected them, but had not yet become the general state. That's when you have to act, when it's still in the fetal stage. That's when you have to intervene. Once it's born, once it grows, then it's disaster. The Jewish people escape by just by a hair's breadth through the intervention of Moshe Rabbeinu. But Hashem wants them to know that they are forgiven, and therefore you will bring a kofer nefesh, an atonement for what you did wrong, and we'll get together again. We can repair this damage. And one last thing. The Alshich says, very clearly quoting the Gemara says that neither Moshe Rabbeinu, neither the Jewish people or David Melech were in any way, it just didn't make sense and wasn't appropriate and didn't fit for them to do what they did. But you can never beat your Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is much bigger and stronger than you or I, except with Hashem's help. In the case of the golden calf, this incredible generation was the highest spiritual level the Jewish people ever got to. Hashem withdrew his protection, his contribution to them fighting the Yetzer Hara, which could allow the golden calf to happen. David HaMelech, with the story of Bathsheba, same story. Hashem withdrew his protection. Why? Because if you live in a generation in which you despair at the spiritual level of the Jewish people and that we will ever be able to get out of this mess, you're supposed to, says the Gemara, look at a generation that was so bad Hashem promised to wipe them out and start again with Moshe. If you or I as individuals do the worst possible thing, we make the worst possible mistake, which includes Chil Hashem, which is certainly what the consequences, justifiably or not, of David HaMelech and Bathsheba, then that should be an inspiration. The fact that Hashem forgave David, that we can be forgiven as well. A lot to say in this week's Parsha, and that's just at the beginning, before we get into the exact Alshich analysis of the mechanics of the Elazov. Maybe we'll get to that when we repeat the cycle next year. But we wish you all a very, very good Shabbos. Keep well, keep safe.